Hey guys, welcome to my Booktube, where I'll be discussing the books Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse, and I'll also be discussing the novel Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson. So basically, if you've never read either of these books, Out of the Dust is about 14-year-old Billie Joe, who lives in Oklahoma in what they call the panhandle of the Dust Bowl, which is where it was the driest, the heaviest drought. She lives with her dad on a farm. In July of 1934, Billie Joe's mom, who she idolizes and looks up to and loves so much, accidentally starts a fire in the kitchen. Billie Joe tries to help put out the fire on her mom by accidentally throwing kerosene, which she thought was water. Her mom runs into flames and has to end up going to the hospital. If Billie Joe's dad wasn't such a mess, he wouldn't have spent their emergency money on getting drunk. So then Billie Joe's mom could not get help, and when she finally had her baby, she died while giving birth, and then the baby dies too. Eventually, Billie Joe's dad meets Louise, who becomes her new stepmom. However, she's really cool, and Billie Joe really likes her, and she doesn't overstep her boundaries. Basically, Out of the Dust just follows Billie Joe through her struggles, trying to rekindle her relationship with her dad, and eventually finding peace with herself, with her stepmom, and with her life. She, once the burns on her hands recover, she starts to play piano again, and things look pretty hopeful for her by the end of the novel. The other book that I'll be comparing Out of the Dust to is Chains, which follows 13-year-old Isabel through her turmoils and struggles with slavery. After both of Isabel's beloved parents are dead, her and her sister live with Miss Mary Finch, a kind slave master who teaches them how to read and write and promises them freedom. But Miss Mary Finch dies, and the girls never get their freedom. They are instead sold to a loyalist couple in New York, the Locktons. So the timeline for this novel takes place from the years 1776 to 1777, otherwise known as the Revolutionary War. So Chains follows Isabel as she meets Curzon, a slave boy owned by a rebel master, and how she becomes a spy for the Patriots, and eventually how she goes to jail and she gets branded by Miss Lockton because Miss Lockton said she sold Ruth, and then eventually the turning point is when she's so mad and she finds out that Ruth is still alive. Isabel grabs Curzon from the jail and escapes to the Jersey Shore, where the novel ends on a hopeful note that she will find her sister. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some common themes and literary elements that take place in both the novels, including family, dealing with grief and death, what home is, struggles with identity, and the overall theme of hope that is very prevalent in both the novels. So just like Isabel, Billie Joe in Out of the Dust loves her mom. She is her love and her life, and she's closer with her, definitely, than with her father, because her dad didn't even want her. Isabel similarly has a great relationship with her mother and constantly uses her as kind of strength, and she thinks back on these moments when her mom would do certain things to comfort her, and she uses that to get through the novel. For both these girls, family is the one thing in their life that hasn't changed. Even though Ruth is separated from Isabel, there's still hope that they will be rekindled, and it is clear that Isabel is fighting to get back Ruth. And even though Billie Joe's dad resents Billie Joe at first, after she comes home, it is testament that their growing relationship proves family is forever. Another common theme in the novel is the girls dealing with pain, death, and grieving. Both of the girls lose parents and loved ones, and how they deal with it is actually marked by physical things. For Billie Joe, it's the dust. It consumes her. Throughout the novel, there's many references to how dust is part of everything. She lives, breathes, eats it. It's a part of her body. For Isabel, her pain is marked by the eye that is branded on her cheek. The first major trauma that Billie Joe experiences is when she burns her hands trying to put out the fire that was attacking her mother. From then on, Billie Joe's hands are so burned that she cannot play piano, the one thing she truly loves doing. Billie Joe's burned hands signify the past painful experiences and the death of her mother. But when they heal, she's reminded of how much she loves piano and how much she loved her mother, and she finally has happy memories and can move on from her painful past experiences. For Isabel, she decides that the eye on her cheek does not stand for insolence. It stands for Isabel, and she decides to make it a part of her identity, and she grows from this pain, and she reinvents herself. She wants people to know that the I is for Isabel. That's who she is. So, though both of these girls go through extreme adversity, they take that pain from their past and they turn it into something brilliant. They use it to forget their past and predict their future and control their present. For both girls, they really struggle with what home is. For Isabel, she doesn't really have one. She's a slave girl who's just trying to get her freedom, and she doesn't really have any personal belongings or family to keep her sane during these times. And for Billie Jo, her home has just been completely uptaken by this dust and drought, and her mom was passed away and her life was just turned upside down. So for both of them, what their concept of home is completely flipped upside down. However, they do use things that symbolize home, and they use them to remind themselves of what their good life used to be like. For Billie Jo, home is her mom's apple tree. She looks at it, it reminds her of life, of happiness, especially of her mother. For Isabel, it's Ruth's baby doll. Once Ruth is taken away, she holds on to that baby because it's all she has, and she uses it for comfort to remind her of her family in times of desperation. So both of these girls really have these material things, but they mean so much more than just a possession. Though both these young teenage girls really don't have a lot to hold on to, there is hope throughout both novels. In the ending of Out of the Dust, Billie Jo starts to play the piano again, and you can tell that all is well. She's happy with her stepmother and her father, and she even starts to play the piano again, her one true love. Isabel's hope becomes real when she realizes that Ruth has not been sold to another slave owner, but she's in one of the Lockton's estates in Charleston. She escapes slavery just off of this, and she grabs Curzon and they escape to the Jersey Shore. The novel ends on the hopeful idea that Isabel will find her sister. So overall, I would not read Out of the Dust. It's a free verse poetry, and it gets a little tiring to read that much poetry for a novel. And the whole storyline is so depressing. I feel so bad for this poor girl, and it just really puts a damper on your mood. Chains, I actually really liked. I think that Isabel is a bad A star. She kills it. And I would really recommend this to a lot of people. It's kind of a different take because it shows how the interesting family dynamics and how just like a young girl deals with slavery. You don't really read a lot of books about teenage girls enslaved. It's usually about older men or, boys in general or the masters themselves. So to kind of get an outlook on just like an innocent young girl and all this going on in the Revolutionary War, she's a secret spy. She gets branded. I thought it was really interesting, and I definitely would read this again on my own time. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked what I had to say about these books, and maybe it gave you something to pay attention to the next time around you read it.